Okay, got
All right, we're here. We're making it work. What a mess.
You know what though? This is great because like one thing about critical fandom that we've learned in like the history of BNC too is like do not get too tied to one property, one platform, because when the ish fall apart, you're gonna have to learn how to pivot. You're gonna have to learn how to do something new. So
Yep.
it works.
We're here. We're
did it,
somewhere. We're somewhere on the internet, you know? But hi, y'all. Thank you for coming and for following us over cross-platform as we figure out, stick to the technology that we know will work. But yeah, welcome to our not Instagram live, where we will be talking about critical fandom, what it is, why we practice it, and more. So yeah, I guess first we should go around, introduce ourselves. I'm Bayana. I am a co-founder of Black Nerds Create, and into a lot of fandoms. I'm also a sister of children, so if you hear like screams in the background or like thumps, it's just very energetic children. I'll try to be muted when I'm not talking, but in case that happens while I'm talking. So yeah.
I'll go. I'm Robin. I am also a co-founder of Black Nerds Create. My fandoms have shrunk lately, but I'm out here still. What were we talking? What was the other thing? That was it. I'm Robin. I don't have no children in here. There's some dogs. I just recently moved and there's some street sounds. There's some shenanigans going on, such as city life. So that's what I got going on.
I'm not muted, so I guess I'll go. I was like, oh, I'm not muted. I'm Nick. I work with like social and community at BNC, and I am a fan of many things. I'm a serial fan, if you will. I love a lot of things. So I'm just here to vibe it out because critical fandom is how I approach everything except a few things. A few things I just let it happen and we don't ask questions. But it's very rare. And that's a choice we make. You take it up with your Jesus, with your God, with your deity of choice, and you let it rock. But most stuff, yes, critical fandom is how I like to engage. So excited about the conversation.
Yeah, you said everything, and I was like, that's not strictly true. Okay. Hi, y'all. I'm DJ. I do a lot of the content and community things at BNC. So if you're in the Discord community, you've likely seen me. If you're not in a Discord community, you should join a Discord community. And if you're not on our Patreon, you should join that too. You will get messages and updates and things from the team, but kind of organized by me.
From the team and then funneled through DJ.
Yeah. And yeah, like, everyone here, I'm kind of a fan of a lot of different things. So dabble in anime, do a bunch of reading. I don't know, the different things that'll come up. There's like a lot of stuff that I want to be more kind of involved in fandom around that I am just not, like the Marvel things. I'm not in the fandom. I'm just behind on the shows and things. So varying levels, but yeah, all about critical fandom stuff. Excited for the conversation. And yeah.
Awesome. What is critical fandom?
Yeah. I'll also say if y'all have questions or anything, like feel free to drop them in the chat. We like to, work communication, bounce off of each other.
Two-way street or 4 or 5 way, whatever. Y'all are part of this too.
Yeah, I think like critical fandom, at least the way that like we talk about it at BNC is like critiquing the things we love. It's like very simple. It's like, but also critiquing those things because we like them. It's not just like, oh, this thing is trash and we're just in here talking about things we don't like and we're like in the discourse. And it's also not like, again, sometimes like Nick mentioned, and we can talk about this in more depth too, sometimes it is you're going in empty brained, you're not trying to like get all up in the discourse, you're just trying to like enjoy. And those are two different things. This is like kind of a marriage of the two, but it's also with the intent of like and hope that either this property that you're talking about gets better or other things like it can learn from the sort of missteps that this particular property has made and then like do that better. If that makes sense.
Yeah. And I would also say it's about holding other fans and other people to like think about how their fandom might impose on or like there are, you know, like ships or whatever that like some people like and some people are like, yeah, that's like, you know, they're fascists. So if you like it, I love it. But like, don't harass me because I am critical of that, like of that pairing, right? It's not the issue isn't that you like them. It's the fact that I can't not like them without it being a problem. So it's also like how we interact with each other and how we like hold each other accountable to like, this property is one thing and how we relate to it is all going to be different for each individual person, but we're also people that share space because we like the same thing. So how we interact and engage with each other also is a part of like that critical fandom.
I also think, and this is hilarious, what you were talking about with like, oh, you ship these people, but they're fascist. I accidentally read a romance novel that was about a fascist ship, or one fascist, one not. I don't know, but it's a part of that too. Is like understanding that like fandom has a place in these in the discourse, right, and it has a place in all of these media properties as well. But then holding people to the fact that like what's on the screen, what's on the page is on the page, and you have to like leave space for people to be critical of that. So if you are able to ship a fascist couple and it's because your headcanon has retconned or erased or ignored half of what's on the page or on the screen or whatever, that's fine, but that's not how everyone is going to engage with those characters or with that story. And being able to like, listen, I don't care what nobody says, Loki and Heimdall, they got something going on. There's something there. There's a chemistry that cannot be denied. But if you look at me and you be like, you were tripping, that's valid because.
And I think it's also like acknowledging that you might be in like, you might have a community of folks who ship Heimdall and Loki and y'all go hard for Heimdall and Loki. And within your like, within that little niche community, that is like your canon, your whatever. But then when you venture into the other side or like deeper, you know, you get into the broader fandom, that might not be the case. And like being able to acknowledge like, yeah, this is my headcanon, this is what I love, this is like my jam, but then also like acknowledging that not everyone is going to see it that way and then not like getting upset when they are like, maybe not for whatever reason. Unless that reason is racist, in which case, or, you know, homophobic or whatever. But if it's just like, no, I actually ship like Heimdall with Thor for, you know what I mean? Like,
because listen.
I mean,
if you cannot see Storm Pilot, you might need to check your bias.
I mean, the actors have said that they were deliberately putting that energy into.
They were
if you
doing
read it
romance.
That way, you are actively picking up what they was putting down. Now, whether
they were giving romance.
Different question, but what Anchor and John were doing was definitely like
we see each other.
So, if you read that, you don't have to agree with it. You're wrong, and that's fine. As long as you are fine with being wrong, that's fine. That's the whole point. Like you can just sit in your wrongness. No, but it's just like everybody's gonna read something different because we all come into these situations with our own baggage, right? Like nobody's gonna see the same thing the same way at all, period. And there are things that are very explicit and like people can choose to ignore them, and that's one thing. But a lot of stuff is implied, and so we all are going to read into that what we want to read into that, and it's just making space for people to do that, and not because there's an easy way for that to become harm, because a lot of times y'all are like, oh, this is fine, but it's like this ship or this character is actively racist or actively committed genocide, and it's like, you can love that character, you can ship that character, you just have to understand that our relationship to that character might be different. Mind you, Robin brought up Loki.
What?
I'm just saying, Loki
perfect.
A little bit of a villain, right?
Just a little.
But we can make space for it. And we all like,
We can make space.
I love villains. So
Here's where we test the.
That's my point, though. Like that's the thing. Like I know, right? No, but I know what it's like acknowledging the fact that this is a villain. And like being okay with liking a villain. I think a problem with a lot of stuff is that you are not okay with being okay with certain things. And you feel bad, like, oh, this is a villain. So instead of accepting that you like a villain, you want to make everybody or try to convince everybody it's not a villain. Baby, that's a villain. And that's fine. Because this is fiction. And once you acknowledge
the line between
fiction,
villain and anti-hero.
But that's the conversation. And that's what critical fandom is interrogating that. Because we know with Loki, that's the whole arc, right? But if somebody says like, yeah, Loki was out here just murdering, acting a fool, I can't buy with that. I'm not gonna fight that person. Like, you don't have taste, and that's fine. But no, I'm playing. But no, I get. It. I don't get it, but I get it.
What did they say in the first Avengers? He killed 80 people in 2 days or something like that. So like,
it's like, but
he has a body count, and not in the way that we want to think about his body count.
Kill people, but we just live with it, right? We just like, damn, I got the flu. We don't think that much about it. I'm just saying, sometimes bad things happen, but like, we just move, we grow, we learn, this is critical fandom, guys. This is it. Live in action. But again, there's a difference between me saying like Loki is all these bad things, and like I can acknowledge that and be okay and sit with the fact that other people are not going to agree with the fact that that's a redeemable character. The problem comes when it's like you want to like be in my mentions or have a fight with me because I said this is not a redeemable character. This person did it, and I can go back to the original ship I was talking about because I didn't say it, but I will say it because I love to fight. It was Raylo, right? And people want to tell me all the live long day he's a hero. Actually, I'm like, just because he decided to not kill one person after killing, let's say, untold billions of people, like canonically, I'm not gonna take that as being a hero. I'm gonna say like you got solved for a quick second off of one person and say I'm not gonna commit no murder today. Today is the day I'm not gonna commit some murders. And that's the one time he didn't commit no murders. That's not a hero. Okay, I'm not. And you can disagree with me, but the point is, like, you can't disrespect me and call me out my name, act a fool, because I don't agree with your assessment of that character. Because I don't care if you like it, I love it. Because I don't have to watch it.
Culture by Culture, aka Delia, also said like before you named it, like we didn't name the fascist ship, but we all knew that we're thinking.
I named it
thing.
Because A is so.
Well, I'm saying before you named it, like,
I wanted to be clear.
I thought,
yeah. But there are like I mean, Snape, everyone, right? Like
that was my first. I was gonna say a snake wife. I was gonna do it. And I said, let me not do that. Let me pull back a little because people genuinely like it's. I don't care enough to be in that fight. You like it? I love it. That's it. I'm not about to argue with you on that.
But I do think though that it says something, right? That like you can say like a fascist ship, and then our brains immediately go to a couple of like key. Well, I was thinking Raylo. I feel like we were all probably thinking Raylo. I mean, you could think Snape, but like nobody cares about that wizard boy no more. So like it's all whatever. But I think the problem with like, and I'm naming Raylo, is the vitriol that fandom has for being challenged. I'm not going to say corrected, because it's not that you're wrong for shipping them. You ship who you want to with who you want to. It's that idea of like attacking actors, attacking writers, attacking fans who disagree with you, and like having this like just very firm and unyielding stance that doesn't take any challenge to what you're saying, but also doesn't allow the fact that like Rayla wasn't a thing in the first book or movie. In the first movie, I personally, my brain was like, oh, Finn and Rey, if there is going to be something, is where this is going. Of course, with like Disney and Star Wars being the people that they are, people were like, an interracial couple in 2020s. Oh, hold my pearls. And they were like, okay, never mind, just kidding. But you can't be mad at me that I was like, oh, this is a Finray. Is that what they're? I don't race, whatever.
Finray.
Finray. You can't attack me for seeing that, because I like you said, and I've said this all the time. It's like we are watching the same movie, but we're not taking in the same story. We're not watching the same story, because my lived experiences are going to inform what I take from this piece of media and how I understand it and how I analyze it and what I respond to and what I don't respond to, in the same way that like someone else who's had a different lived experience will attach meaning to something that maybe I don't, or respond to something about it will spark something in them, right? You know, a lot of people, I don't know why, they don't see the chemistry that's bubbling between Loki and Heimdall. They don't see the sparkle in the eye. I do.
The thing is that the problem is that Loki is, he belongs to the streets. He has that kind of chemistry kind of with everybody, and that's the thing. So you can just pick a person that he's shared space with, and that would apply. So I don't think it's wrong. I think it's more so like whoever wanted can get
Whatever
it,
you want to do,
which is supposed to be canonical. Because Loki,
That is
he
canonical,
out there. You know, I'm saying he in canonically.
Loki once turned into a woman and was like, "I'm looking kind of fine."
I'm just saying it's not that far fetched. So that I'm not gonna argue with you. It ain't nothing. It ain't like Ryan with Hermione and Narcissus. Like, why would they ever meet? Even where did they?
That is the weirdest
meet at.
shit.
That's what, like where were they at? Where they both were together to even have a conversation. But you know what? That's her journey.
You like it? We love it.
You like it?
So why do we practice critical fandom? Like, why do we find it valuable?
I think it's very, I mean, I think we see this in everyday life all the time. It's very difficult to underestimate the power of media and story. If you think about like the fight for like representation, right? And just kind of the issues that we're going through right now about changing history books and things like that, or as someone who's neurodivergent, the idea that like, oh, we didn't have autistic people 30 years ago, or we didn't have there's some epidemic now that we have all of these autistic and ADHD people. And it's like, no, they just didn't, one, they weren't getting diagnosed because no one knew like what those things were, or two, they hid those parts of themselves because it was unsafe, right? And so you think about the moral codes of old Hollywood and a lot of the things that kind of censorship that made everyone believe that like America in the 50s looks like fluffy skirts and stay-at-home moms who were super happy. Little did you know that they were all high.
Oh, they on them drugs.
All on drugs. And if they weren't happy, they were getting drugged up because they should be happy. And I think that it is very easy to look at, Leave It to Beaver, or I think Pleasantville, if you haven't seen Pleasantville, is like just a wonderful critique of that kind of thing about the underbelly of life. Like these issues and different differences in people have always been around. And media is created by people. And so it's very important to be able to look at these things critically and say, what are you trying to what is the world that you're trying to reflect? What are you trying to tell me about this world that you're trying to reflect? And can I see myself in it? And is that saying that like I just am not in this story because, you know, I don't think everyone needs to be in every story, or is it saying that like I don't deserve to exist, right? A lot of it is like taken as a whole, the whole media landscape you have to look at. But then sometimes it is just like that one thing. I went to a panel at Comic-Con and a comic book writer was like, it's very easy to, you know, throw in a main character or someone that has like a, you know, a diversity quota, but look at the background of people's stuff. If you're looking at like a Spider-Man comic, which is set in New York City, and he's flying through the air, look at the background. Are they all the same height, the same size? Are there different ethnicities? That if they're not, if they all look very similar, that means that people are walking around New York City, one of the most diverse places in the world, with blinders on. And sometimes it's like it's easy to just draw one type of character and copy paste for like a thing, but that's laziness, and we should call that out, right? So I think this is a very long-winded way of saying, like, I think it's very important to practice critical fandom because it is very easy to mistake the media that we see as reflective of a time period, and that is true to a certain extent, but it's also reflective of who those creators are and what they are trying to come across, or what their inputs are. And we always want to be able to think of that and see that clearly, so that we can fight against it. And Stacey brings up Sex and the City, which I love that show.
I'm gonna say Friends.
Heck yeah.
Girls.
Friends, girls.
Like, y'all
Gilmore Girls.
Like, let's be serious.
Gilmore Girls
Yeah.
was in a small town in Connecticut, but like still when they would go to like New York or something, Yale should have had more Asian. I think Yale is like I don't know. Yes.
So many.
Yeah.
I think like Bayana kind of already touched on this before, but like one of the things related to that, Robin, that I think critical fandom does is like it does make, or you know, we hope that it makes media better, right? And I think specifically not just like pop culture criticism, because that's its own thing, sure, and that can, you know, have similar effect, but like specifically when folks are coming from a place of fandom, a place where like they know the thing, they love the thing, they appreciate the thing, I think that the critique is shaped differently. I think that you know, for me, whenever I'm reading something that's like a critical piece on whatever, I'm always looking to see like, okay, has this person written about this before? Like, have you ever in your life said anything about this topic before? Is this your first time, you know, just trying to say something because everyone else is talking about it, or because you feel a particular way or whatever? Like, how are you coming in and relating to it? And then also, how do I then relate to kind of you, and how much do I want to put by your response and that type of thing? And so I think that there is something to critique that's coming from a place of like appreciation, place of care, and then especially when it comes to like works by marginalized people, like a place where folks share identities with like the characters and creators, right? And are sort of picking up on different things and picking up on what others may not. Like Wizard Team is doing Amari and the Night Brothers right now, if folks are not listening, right? But I just remember like when I was reading the book, I read the book so that I could be prepared to listen to y'all on Wizard Team. And being like, yo, this story happening in Atlanta is like doing so much for me right now in a way that like I couldn't even fully unpack as a reader. And then listening to you all and hearing you start to unpack it on all those different things, like I don't know that someone else who had just picked up the book, read it real quickly, and was like doing a quick review would have pulled out all those different things. And so, yeah, I think that fandom especially is made up of folks that have like, you spent time with the thing. Like you didn't just engage with it one time. You didn't just, you know, go by the movie and that's it. Like you have invested in it. You've talked about it with people. It's like, you know, it's just this sort of nerdy way of engaging with it. And I think that makes for different and unique critique. And I think that change, I think that like as a creator, you know, I'm not like, you know, spotlight published whatever at this point in time, but if I was, I would pay more attention to the critiques from fandom spaces, I think, than I would from just like, you know, any big voice, you know, anybody on TV, whatever. I would want to know if the person talking about my stuff actually gave a crap about my stuff and like other media like it.
Yeah. I think too, like it's one of those things where like we talk about like the, you know, we critique in the hopes of changing things. I think one thing, just touching on the question from Harriana Hook, who asks if we think it's extremely important for Black people to tell their own stories. I think that's also part of the push, right? Is like you're watching certain shows or like reading certain books or like consuming certain stories, and you can kind of always tell when like the person is not of the like creator's lived experience, and like obviously like there's some leeway in that, like you can't, like all of your characters can't be exactly the same as you, and like maybe one will hold a specific identity that you do and another will have a different one, and like there will be a lot of different things, but specifically with like different cultures, and like I think that is, you can just always tell. And it's always like, I think it's really important. I think that like just because you see them, oh, there goes the kids. Just because you see the person and they're like, oh, they look like me or whatever. I think that that's like step one. But then there's also there's like a deeper part of that. So I do think it's important for creators to, if you don't have like, if for some reason you feel like, no, this character has to be like in this identity, then you bring someone else in who can help inform that. You can't just like assume that you have all of that. But I think that like with critical fandom, it's important because it calls those things out. So then again, like the next time, hopefully, not all the time, because folks, you know, they don't like to listen. But the idea is that then in the future, those issues aren't coming up. In the same
and I think it's also important to think about, like, you know, we always say like, you know, Blackness is not a monolith, and queerness is not like life. Humanity is not a monolith, right? But there are touchstones. Like you will see things that like Black people who grew up in the South of like Southern United States have in common with Black people who grew up in the Caribbean, have in common with people who grew up in like South Saharan Africa. Like there are commonalities for sure. And a lot of that is because anti-Blackness is global. So we do have, you know, like colonization has touched us all. But I also think about, I was thinking about this happened with the author, and I don't read her, so I might get her name wrong. Beth Aliberti. She does those like LGBTQ rom-coms, and she usually has a writing partner, where she had to like come out and say like, actually, I'm bisexual, because a lot of people are like, these are not on own stories. And it's like you said, I think it is important at certain points to make sure that you are, especially depending on the character, like the character's role in the story, how much time you're spending on those characters, that you're, I mean, I think it's important to get characters right in general. You want them always to be three-dimensional and as like holistic as possible. But I also think that there are times in which, if I wrote a book about a Black girl growing up in California, it would read very differently than the book that Bayana would write about a Black girl growing up in California, than the book that Nick would write. Me and Nick are both from Southern California. Bayana's from Oakland, but still, so like there would be those regionalisms, right? But then there's also like what your family life looks like, or the people that you're surrounded by, like whatever your inputs are going to give you different outputs. And I think it is very important that people are writing those stories, not only that they reflect themselves, like I would prefer Black people write Black stories and not white people writing Black stories, but that there is an authenticity. And I think that's the most important thing. It's like, and that will shine through. And I think sometimes people get really stuck on, there are white passing Black people who have very Black experiences, or there are straight passing queer people, right? And so I think sometimes too, you have to not get so stuck on like the cover of the author's photo on the jacket, and really look at what, and I'm using books, but like this is the writer, the director, whatever, not get so stuck on like their outward appearance and really look at like, does this read authentic to me? And where is their harm? Because there's also Black authors who write Black stories where I read a lot of harm. And you have to say like, maybe hopefully they're in the process of a lawyer. There's a one romance author, the first book she wrote, I was like, ooh, I don't know. And like her last book came out and I was like, look at you. Okay. Like she had the talent, and there were like just little like things that I was like, ooh, that might be harmful. But I could also very much see where that came from, because like I said, we're all swimming in the sea of white supremacy and everything. So there are these, things that people pick up, but you can't say like, oh, you're not Black enough to write the story, or you don't deserve to write the story. And then you also, again, I think this is really important as fans and as being a part of critical fandom, is to, like Bianna said, like the hope isn't, because not everything's going to be perfect. The hope is that the next thing that they put out will have improved, and then the next thing will have improved, and you see this like growth in this journey, because you don't know what you don't know, and I just think I think it's important, yes, that we write our own stories and that people tell them, but I think it's also important to not be so fixated on what the creator looks like, if the story is, if they're doing the work, I guess I should say.
And I mean, I also think that, part of it, especially with fandom, one thing I love about fandom is it makes clear that like it's about more than the story, right? Like I think part of what like where frustration can come in, where it's like I'm seeing this media that is being presented to me as representative of whatever identity, and then I'm learning that the team or the person, if it's like a book, or like a team if it's like a movie, whatever, behind it does not have anyone that is like that shares those identities, it's like representative in the same way, is like that feels like it only happens when folks think about the art or the media as like a solo thing that lives alone, apart from fandom, apart from people's responses to it, apart from like cultural impact, right? Like what folks are off, especially like in our like digitized, like heavily connected world today, you go to a movie, you like it, you look at the director, you follow them on Twitter, you're like then going to the event that they're having in town, you're like meeting other, like it's so. And sometimes it gets bad because it's like parasocial relationships and whatever. Like there's an extreme of that, of like, okay, this author is not your bestie, calm down. But I think that there's like a lot of benefits to it too. And so what folks might be looking for beyond the story, right, is like, I want to know how this person got to where they were in art. I want to know how, more about the things that have supported them. Like they're looking for the fandom and the community that is built around the thing, and it can feel interrupted when like that stories are constantly coming from like places and folks that are not sort of like representative in the same way. Here come my youth, my children. But yeah, so I don't know that I'm having like the best wording for it off the top of the head, but I am thinking about like how fandom takes the media from just like the single thing that like lives and exists in isolation on the timeline and makes it like a much more kind of interactive, like living thing. And I think that is where it does really matter kind of who is behind it, because you want that person to be a part of it, and they can't fully be a part of it if they've got nothing else to share, right? Like, I did my research for this one chapter of the book, and like, that's all I got to say about Black America. And then folks like, can you come speak on this panel? And you can't say shit because you got nothing else to say because you don't know, right? Like, can you expand on it? No. Can you put it in context with other literature? No. Can you do whatever? No. Like, that's where it kind of falls apart.
Yeah. I think my answer to, like, I guess the original question of like why it's important, and it kind of pulls from everything y'all have said, but I think Robin said it earlier, like, media, we can't underestimate the importance of media. And for me, it's important that we are critical of how anybody's represented, but especially people who are already, we already have news media. We already have like these narratives that are like built, our country is built on like lies about Black people, right? Like, it's built on the idea that migrant workers, and we know we talk about like people of Latin descent when they say that. I hate when they say migrant. You know, we all talk about, stop doing that. Because y'all act like y'all treat people from like Europe the same as you treat somebody.
They're never talking about the Canadians.
They are never talking about
Scandinavians.
So, but they have all of these things, right? All of these ideas. This is baked into our society. So we already are born into a world where we believe these things about these people. Media is important because it gives us the opportunity to meet these people without having to meet them in person. Because everybody's not going to be around. Like, you are in a silo. A lot of people live in neighborhoods that are only a certain demographic. You might be around a lot of other people of color, but you might still not only, you know, it might be like Black and Asians, a lot of like different Latino cultures, but not Black people, or, you know, it's a lot of mixture, but it's still mostly silo, right? So if I go my whole life and I've never met somebody like Mexican, right? I live in LA, so I have, but like theoretically, right? And the only thing I know about them is that, like, oh, they don't speak English. They know Espiki and they like work on farms. I'm carrying that with me my whole life, unless that's debunked in some way, right? Because most people don't challenge what they know to be the truth, what they know to be the facts, like, because they have no reason to, right? I've never met a Mexican person. Nobody has challenged that. So media has the opportunity to challenge all these things. And so it's important that when they do make those attempts, they do it correctly. Because if you have, then every movie is showing people of Mexican descent that same way, now you are enforcing a harmful belief, right? In a way that you have the opportunity to show these as real people, human people with families. All of these people are not here illegally. You see what happened in Florida when they call themselves, oh, we gonna threaten them to be funny, so they were shaking their boots and all them dip farms. It is like crops going bad, and it's like, yeah, that's fucked up for the ecosystem. It's fucked up for, like, that doesn't just impact those farmers. But at the same time, one has to cackle because, like, you did that to yourself because you want to play in people's faces and you want to be racist, and you think that you can both benefit off this labor and benefit off of these people and then also threaten their livelihood and threaten their abilities to be in this country. All right, good for you. And now look at that, right? And a lot of people were okay with it because they have that belief in their head, like, oh, this is what they are here to do. This is what they're here for. This is what their value is. Now you realize how important those people are to your whole system of like your whole county tax system based on these people being employed. What, y'all ain't gonna have nothing because what? Because you don't know better and you haven't been challenged. So now you like sitting there looking dumb, right? So yeah, media, like, critical fandom is important because media exists in our real world, like DJ said. Like, media does not exist. It's not a thing that exists separate from our world. We can't and we can. Like, you can choose to do that. I can choose to treat a piece of media like a thing that exists on its own. And I would do that if I believe the creator's intent is to not reflect our real world. But so many things are meant to be allegories, right? And they are meant to reflect our real world, but just through a lens of like, oh, it's, aliens, like aliens instead of, mutants instead of Black people, aliens instead of people with certain, disabilities, like whatever. Fine. But if you attach it to our real world, then you have to deal with what those real world connections mean. So if you do that incorrectly, right? If you have these power dynamics and then you try to shift it and try to make it seem like, oh, the aliens aren't so bad because the aliens are actually white people. It's like, no, you can't keep reinforcing that dynamic. We ain't gonna let you have it. We're not gonna let it happen. So of course we have to be like, this is not how you do that. That's not what this looks like. Blah, 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 blah. I think it's super important because unfortunately people learn from what they watch. We learn from TV. Like, there are people whose whole entire beliefs about trans people come from like Jerry Springer. And I'm not saying that jokingly, but I mean, there are people whose only interaction with a trans person were those, mind you, these are mostly actors, right? They get paid to come on there, act a damn fool. It's a storyline. That person's not stealing nobody, man. Okay. They are just there to get their little check and go home, right? But if that's the only connection or only way you have ever interacted with that kind of person, that's your own. You like, they just messy. They just want to steal somebody's man. They want to lie to people, right? So when you are writing a trans character in a film and it's supposed to be reflective of a reality, right? Then you have to be very careful how you reflect that person. There are some people who will always fit into a stereotype because they are based on amalgamations of a lot of people, right? But we have to critique it when it's especially harmful, which is often when it's LGBTQ people, people of color, even people with disabilities, certain religions. Like when you think of Western media and how it treats like we, if you see a desert, you're like, oh shit, here they go. They finna do some, like, it's finna be some bombs, it's finna be some terrorists. Like, please get over. Like, y'all need to stop this. These are not the worst threats in the world. Get a new storyline, and that's what the critical fandom is. Like, I love this thing, but I would love for y'all to like, let's move on from this thing. Let's start breaking something else down, right? Because there are a lot of things I know now because I like watch, like even watching stuff from other countries where I'm like, oh, like there are things I didn't know were real. Like I was like, Harry Potter's a perfect example. I was like, I thought it was a magical world because I didn't never heard of no things like none of this made sense. Then you start like watching British media, like, no, that's just what some schools look like. It just be like that. There's not even shit even make this up. Right? Like this ain't even real. Like this ain't even like a unique thing that she invented for this world. She just took a certain type of like British school system was like, but magic. And like, because I don't know better, because I have never seen it elsewhere. I'm like, this is amazing. So yeah, it's important because we are influenced by the media that we consume, and that can be negative or positive. But I think if everything is being created without any intention to be thoughtful about it, and if we are never calling people to question, like, why did you make that choice? Because some people don't know why they made that choice, right? But if the fans are like, we love this thing, but why did this character have to do that? We love this hero's journey. Why did that lady have to die for this man to get to that place? Was it necessary? Right? Like these are just questions we ask. And sometimes it does mean that we get better storytelling from those people, but it also means the people that are also in fandom with us and who are also engaging with this are learning something from when they become creators or when they're putting stuff into the world. They can say, oh yeah, they didn't like that when that happened to my favorite character, so let me not repeat that because that people don't like that. So even if the creators are reading the thing and they're like, whatever, I was about to say a whole full name, but I didn't. I was like, even if they just don't take criticism or if they make fun of the fandom for giving criticism, the fandom is seeing the criticism of other fans and are able to then, that informs what they create and also how they relate to other things. So it's important because it just affects our real world in a very tangible way. And we sometimes see that, like, you'll see a movie and they're like, oh, this product, everybody likes it now because we've seen it utilized in a fun way on the show or in the movie, right? Like, and sometimes it's benign, but a lot of times it's not. It really is life or death for people. Like when I have a split-second decision to make about, oh, this person makes me nervous. Do I call the cops? You might have just saw a character on the show that was like so cool. You're like, you know what? Nah, this is a human being. This is a person. But if the last thought you have is like, oh, this is an aggressive person, you might dial that number 911. And it might be a whole thing that could have been avoided because you have like now seen a person of that demographic, whatever they are, and know that those people are real and they are human and have their own like internal lives. And unfortunately, a lot of ways that people are seeing that is only through media. They're not getting that in their everyday lives because, again, we live in a very siloed world. Even though it's connected, people still have echo chambers, you know? Like, my situation is very tailored, okay? I'm curated. There are things y'all will post, like, oh, this all over my timeline. I'm like, oh, hate that for you. Like, why is that on your timeline, baby? You need to delete some people. That's crazy to me. So I know for a fact that bubbles exist. I choose my bubble, but I'm also aware that I'm in my bubble. So I'm like, let me see what other people talk about. Because I know me and my friends feel this way. Let me go see. But that's the thing that's a part of critical fandom, having that thought. So like, let me see if my belief or my thought is shared or if I'm, on my bullshit. And a lot of times you find that like there's a conversation happening that you are not in because you ain't looking to see what other people have to say about nothing. You just like, oh, this is what I believe, boop bop. And I don't know. To me, things are just funner when we have something to like talk about. And that doesn't necessarily mean criticism in like the negative way of like tearing something apart, but just thinking through these character choices, thinking about, oh, why would they do that? I don't love it, but I get it because there are a lot of things where I'm like, I wouldn't do it. Couldn't be me. But I understand what this filmmaker or what this writer was doing, and that's interesting because then we can talk about like how we, like DJ said, how did we get here? What is the motivation? Like how, and that's to me just makes the experience of like watching something or reading something or listening to something richer because now you have this world expands based on how much you want to like engage with it, and you can only do that if other people are engaging in it and like talking about it and like wanting to actually really dive into it.
Yeah.
Not so long, but yeah.
Bouncing off of that just a little bit, we should speed up a little, but just thinking about like what does critical fandom actually then look like in practice? Like how do you have all these thoughts, you want to say things, like how do you actually then approach that?
I mean, y'all got podcasts, that's all I'm saying. I ain't podcasting seems to be a great way to do it.
I mean, I think you can do it without podcasting too. I mean, there's like so many times that we do like, I mean, I can't tweet anymore. I don't know what's going on, but every time I try to do a tweet from my phone, it's just like,
Did you turn your phone off and on? Because that happened to me a couple days ago after you had mentioned it the first time, and then I just restarted my computer. I mean, restarted my phone.
I might try that again. I deleted the app and reinstalled the app, and it's still happening to me. But anyway, there are a lot of times in which I remember us watching the very first or the premiere episode of Doctor Who with Jodie, and I remember the timeline when they fridged Ruth. And again, like Nick was saying about a curated, not Ruth, Grace.
Yeah.
Sorry. I remember that, like, again, what Nick was saying about having a curated timeline and how important that is. I remember knowing that I followed the right people because it was all just like, wait, no, I know they're not about to. Oh my God. And then just boom.
I just had the conversation with somebody. This is deja vu. I literally talk about this. I was like, if you look at my timeline and you look at the broader Doctor Who timeline, it was literally so jarring because I was like, okay, I love her. She's great. 5 minutes later, we like, they gonna do some shit. And as we go, if other people are tweeting like, yeah, that's the cool. She got her Sonic. She got her jacket. We like, damn. I don't think she in the next episode. Like we was like already preparing ourselves for this character to be killed off, which is so messed up because like it's such a fun episode when you don't have that looming. Like a lot of people got to experience that and be genuinely shocked, which I find hilarious. And like when I point at people, I'm like, if you look at like is anybody I follow, like just look at it and see if you can pinpoint when we knew. And it's very early. It's like maybe 10 minutes. We like, yeah, this ain't looking great. I think and it's like she does a specific thing, like a very take charge thing. I'm like, oh shit.
And I think that it's like really impactful to see that, like to see how different those timelines are, right? Again, it goes into like lived experiences and who is, and like a lot of those fans like are just Black fans. They're not even, I don't think, purposefully practicing critical fandom at that point. They're just like, this is some shit. But so you can have a podcast, but you can also just like tweet about it, having conversations. The reason why Wizard Team even started was Bayana would come over, and I don't know what would happen, but someone would say something about Harry Potter, and then an hour and a half later, she's standing at my door frame trying to leave, and
doing
we're having this like goodbye. but also, and you know what I mean? But like having those conversations did like so much, because when she came and was like, let's start this thing, I was like, okay, but I want to do a Harry Potter podcast because I've listened to Harry Potter podcasts and they don't do it like we do it. And we're just doing it in the living room. Right. And so even just having those one-on-one conversations is also really good because it helps you to really like process those things that just don't sit right in the spirit, and I don't even think that either. Like, I don't think it seems like negative. It doesn't always have to be negative. It helps you process things that like really resonated with you or really felt like, oh, they got this right. If you're in the Black Nerds Create Discord, when people were reading Legendborn and then Bloodmarked, like, listen, I'm always late. I started BNC Book Club as a like, you read what you read and I read what I read and then we talk about it afterwards. And now they start doing these group reads and I'm always like, I'm gonna do it, and then I don't do it because I don't like being told I'm a mood reader. Listen, but Bloodmark hit. I think this happened with Legendborn too, and everyone went nuts. And it was like one of those things where I was like, I'm not ready to read this yet. Mostly because all of y'all are reading it, and I don't like to be. I like to be different, you know. I'm an Enneagram 4, but also, I knew when I started it that I was going to love it because, like, our community is dope. First off, but like, there's a power in like in a piece of media like resonating with that many people the same way at the same time. That just like makes you feel like confident, right? And feel like, oh, I can't wait to like dive into this and like know that it's going to be something that like sticks with you. And then there are times in which it's just like Nick, DJ, and I did Tarbis Talks About the Man Who Fell to Earth. And the first like 3 episodes, I think I kept being like, I don't really know what's going on and I don't feel smart enough for the show. And then like something clicked and I was like, I did say like, I don't feel smart enough for the show, but I know that it's important and amazing. Like, I know that it's good. I just don't know. I don't know what's happening. And then something happened in the middle of that season that I was like, this is like changing television. Like, this is like, and it was one of those also where it's like, we know enough people are not watching this show and more people need to watch the show because this is it.
Robin. Why are you
bringing up bad?
We knew we were gonna get hurt. We knew we were gonna get hurt. But it was hurt so like, good.
Yeah, it was a point where we was like, we gotta be okay with this being it. Like, we knew because it was like we was like, this is niche. And like it's not getting what it needs to get broadly. So it was like we were talking about it like all the theorizing, but also like they probably ain't gonna give us. So we need to be okay with this being where it goes. Like, this was the end. But that was tricky. But I think like you brought up our community, and like that's I think my favorite way, I guess, to engage with fandom. And like that's how I think people just having conversations with people is like how you can engage with fandom. Because a lot of times it's like, first and foremost, very regularly, I'm like, oh, other people like that. Like, this is a thing that happens so much. I'm like, oh, I wasn't single, like the only person watching and keeping the show afloat for 10 years. Like, that's crazy. Because nobody that I knew in my circle watched it. Like, that's how I felt about Supernatural for the first like 7 seasons. Like, I was like, I don't know how I'm doing this. Like, I am so strong. Because I am clearly the only person in the whole, like, I just never met people who watched it. And then somehow I got stumbled onto like Supernatural Tumblr. I was like, oh, here they go. Like, here go these people. Like, are they in these trees? But I never would have met them if I didn't seek them out, right? And so it's a lot of things like to this day, I'll name something just random. And somebody like, oh, that was my thing. I was like, oh, this was a real thing. I maybe thought I made this up because nobody ever talked about it. So there's also like a validation of like, hey, this was a thing that like other people cared about. So you're not like, I don't care about being weird or nothing, but it's like, damn, if nobody liked it, maybe I am the problem. Like, maybe I should do better. But when you find out that other people liked it and like it resonated with them, it makes you feel like validated in your choices and like what you like. And then, like, everything doesn't have to be that way, but it's fun to like know that other people like are on the same page with you about things. And also, me personally, because I know I approach things very weirdly sometimes. I like knowing what people disagree about. Not even like in a fight way, but just like, oh, I 100% did not read it that way. And that helps me, because then if I watch the thing again, I'm a rewatcher. If I watch something, I have somebody's thought in the back of my head. I'm like, okay, I see it. They was right. That was given this or that. And I like that. That to me enhances my rewatch experience. Now I'm watching it with all them things that we talked about. I'm like, let me let me focus. Because now y'all playing in my face. Let me see. And then it's like, oh, this is a valid point they was making. Like, I can't even fight with them because I agree. So I think it just enhances things to have other people's like thoughts, especially when it's something, again, nuanced or something you wouldn't know. Because there are people who, I'll use the Little Mermaid as an example. I don't have Caribbean, and I'm using the broad, like I don't have people in my life who are Caribbean. When I was younger, my like cousin stepfather was Jamaican, and like I could not understand this man. Okay, he had to point at things for me to know what we were talking about. He was like, "I'm like, so you want me to wash the dishes?" Got it, because you're saying a lot of words I don't understand. So mentally, I'm like, yeah, they are House Sebastian out here calling these people all these claws and all this stuff because it's Sebastian. Like he's supposed to be nice, amiable. I don't know, but like I can't. I was like, yeah, I think his accent is broadly Caribbean, and then people are like, boo, 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 boo. And I'm like, damn, okay, y'all right. Because y'all know better. I don't know better because I don't know these accents. I can't clock. I couldn't tell you where you are from the accent. But obviously somebody from Jamaica can, somebody from Trinity can. And so when they telling me like, oh, he tried to do this, that, and that, and he failed, I'm like, you must be right because I don't know better. So I like knowing. I like having heard that and being able to take that and be like, damn. Because I turned around because I was like, oh, I think he was just doing like a generic accent that wasn't supposed to sound like nothing. Then he in the interview talking about some, I kind of talk, I listen to these accents. I'm like, oh, so you tried. Yeah, crazy. Because like that changes my relationship with that, right? But it also makes it where now when I'm talking about the movie and I'm like, oh, I love the movie, but they accent crazy. Like, because now I have that context where I did before. I was all the accent fine because it ain't meant to be a real accent. Now I'm like, oh, he actually got y'all about, like he was really out here trying it. And he just failed at what he was trying to do. And that's the way, like now going forward, that's how I engage with that particular performance, right? Like I have that new information because people was like, yeah, that accent ain't given. I'm going to take y'all right for it because that's not my experience to speak on, right? And once I know, I'm on your side because I just like to bully people. So now we can bully him about this accent that he shouldn't have even tried to do. Now I know that he was trying to do it, So I just like having conversations, and I think it helps you feel better about your own responses to things. It makes you feel not weird or alone, especially when you respond to something that you don't think other people are responding to, like a certain character being treated a certain way. You may be identified with that character. You like, and somebody's like, yeah, I don't like what they did to that character. It might be a little minor character, but it's like, damn, somebody else care about that character. That makes you feel, because usually it's something you identify with that's probably reflective of yourself in some way. So you're like, damn, if they cared about that, they could care about me, So I don't remember what the question was, but
my like short answer kind of building off of that of like, what does critical fandom look like in practice? That was the question. It's just like, I think it looks like in part allowing yourself to take the things that you like seriously, which again, there's probably like an extreme that is too much at some point. And you can understand that not everyone else will feel the same way, right? So like you can be like, this is my thing. I'm taking it seriously. I want to know everything about it and whatever. Not everyone is going to engage that way, and that's fine, but allowing yourself the space to do so and to like, to ask the questions and to go further in and to be like, whatever, even if everyone else is not doing that. Like I saw a comment, someone was saying like, people will say, oh, it's not that serious. Or like, oh, whatever. And like kind of try to dismiss, the conversation that's happening and like the criticism that's happening. And if it's not serious to them, that's fine. But if you want to take it seriously, that's okay too. And like, there are people that will take it seriously with you, and will allow you to kind of go on that journey because you can learn about not just the property, but like what you believe about bigger things in general. Like what you, like we would be having conversations, y'all brought up Snape or whatever. It was just funny about like, it's about the character, but it's also like about teaching. Like, what do I believe, right? Like, how do I believe students should be treated in school? How do I believe, right? Like, you should engage with like a traumatized child. Like, what do I believe about this, and this? There's like all these bigger questions that folks are engaging with when they're looking at these properties. The same thing with like Naruto, right? And talking about
and take care of orphans.
Yeah, like
when a kid loses their parent.
What do you do when you promise to take care of a kid and then you don't? Like, what do I believe about that?
Come on.
But yeah, so anyway, I expect, like, as a nerd, as like, you know, someone who has been through probably similar journeys to all of you all with that and that identity, I think it's okay to like give yourself permission to take things seriously, even if it is a TV show, a video game, or whatever, and find the other people that will take it seriously with you.
Yeah. Before we move on, I do also like another, I think, good example of critical fandom is fan fiction. It's not, in part because you get like all those different things that we were talking about. So like, oh, I love this thing so much, I really want to explore it further. Like, I'm gonna write a fic about it. Oh, the way that this ended is trash. I hate it. We're just gonna throw it in the garbage and write the whole thing from scratch. Or like, they were wrong. This ship should have been got together. All the steps were laid out, and y'all somehow ended up over here. Y'all were going on path A, and then just decided to like cut into path B for what? I'm gonna write a whole fic about it. Like all of those things. It's like you have the conversations with the people, right? But it can also like inspire you or like get you mad enough to like write something else, you know? So I think that's also a really good way because it's like it's the conversation, but it's like also another way to process it by yourself as well if you don't have those people to talk to all the time, or if you're like in a group where like, oh, I don't, you know, I'm the only person who watches Avatar or whatever, like then I can just go in on my little Google Doc and do what I need to do, and that's another way to like process and to like, you know, just explore different things.
And like build on the stuff that you liked, right? Like going back to the fact that it doesn't always have to be negative. Like with Legendborn and Bloodmark, like before Bloodmark came out, a bunch of there was like a certain part of the story in Legendborn that a bunch of us were like, we want this explored more. We hope it happens in book 2, but like we don't know. And so like we were writing fanfic around a thing that like we really loved and wanted to see more of, versus like, oh, I hated this thing, I want it to be fixed, you know, like it's got to be changed.
The
Matrix got Nick.
The last two questions. So, because kind of going off of this, thinking about like what are the steps after critical fandom? Because like you don't always. I'm not skipping it. I'm just switching. I'm gonna flip the question, ma'am. So yeah, thinking about like what are the ways or what are the things after critical fandom? Like obviously you can just say like, oh, I thought this thing could be improved in this way and leave it there, but like what are other ways that you could like further that or, you know, do more? Fanfic is a way.
Yeah, I think fanfic is like one, like you said, like this, like a step after, or during. It can help you process.
It kind of depends, yeah.
Yeah, but I also think I think a lot about Fandom Forward and what they did, which is like these stories bring up all the stuff. They're doing it right now with Ariel and like protect Ariel's water. Like this whole story takes place in oceans, and like we're right now experiencing like insane crisis with our oceans and with our environment in general, and like it allows you to help create change in a way that is also like very tied to something that you love or enjoy. I think that there are also, you know, a lot of times I feel like, you know, I think Bayana, you said like reading and stuff is like reading some of those stories that really touched you is what helped you figure out like you wanted to write. And like I know for myself, even though that's not the path that I ended up choosing or didn't pan out for me, but it was a very important to me that I went to school for media studies and wanted to work in television and work in film production, because I think about all the time, like, and we're seeing some change to this with like the level of access that people have to like the internet and some of the gates coming down. But like, for example, The Color Purple, get ready to be sick of me, y'all, because the musical is coming out as a film. The Color Purple written by Alice Walker, was made into a movie, would not have been made without Steven Spielberg signing on to direct it, a white Jewish man, to direct the story about Black women. Oprah Winfrey helped as well, but like Oprah being a producer, and then being a member of that cast, but like we don't think of, it's not widely known. We're kind of seeing this a little bit more, getting some pulling the curtain back on like some of these like gatekeepers and things, but like the barriers to creating stuff and to getting things out there, especially just because of money and access to those things. Now it's very possible to write, produce, and like film something on your phone. It's not going to look the same as like a big budget movie, but you can do that and you can get it out there and you can, hustle and grind and get enough attention that then someone wants to take a chance on you, or a studio will take a chance on you. That happens more now, but it still doesn't happen enough. And so being involved in critical fandom also opens your mind to like how I would make these things better, how I would change these things. And then like, do I want to write my own story? Do I want to join this industry and try to like help, get, 10 years ago, would Legendborn have ever even been purchased and published? Like, we don't know, but like now it's a matter of like, who's gonna, adapt it, right? And so I just think that like those are kind of the next steps. And if you don't want to go in there, because it's really hard, writing, creative work, they don't come with healthcare plans, which is really rude, and we should think about that. But like, you didn't think about like me. I was like, I'm gonna join Hollywood and change the world, and then I was like, I need health benefits, and so now I work in community, but I like spent today trying to figure out how I was going to like embed Avatar into the next thing I do at work, because I can, and so like you put yourself in positions where you can then continue to like spread these stories that you love and like figure out ways to like get more people on board or see those things. And it can be in large ways, like becoming an author like Bayana and breaking people's hearts in new and different ways, or it can be in small ways, like adding Avatar references to your newsletter at work, which is what I do. So yeah, I think there's like plenty of next steps.
Yeah.
Word. Okay. Final question. Is there anything like Nick dropped out, but I know they have lots of things about this too, but like one, like we've kind of mentioned at the top that like, yes, it's okay to sometimes not practice critical fandom, and to just go in like empty brain, like I'm just gonna do this. So I guess slightly not switching, but like adjusting the question, like, are there any fandoms in particular that you, or even just properties in general, that you just go into and are like, I'm just here. Oh, there they are. I'm just here.
Okay.
I'm just here to hang out. I'm not trying to get critical. I'm not trying to like do that. What are those fandoms? And like why? Like why?
The Dick Wolf universe, first of all. Any and all procedurals around cops. Though I will say, I think the critical fandom is still very important in that, which is to say, I recognize that these things have issues, but if I focus on them, I wouldn't be able to enjoy it at all, or the guilt would work against me. So when I love Law and Order, I think it is the most soothing show in the world. I recognize, though, that it actually takes place in a urban fantasy parallel universe in which law enforcement works and they have the proper resources and they actually care about the people. And like sometimes they'll do a thing where they're like, yeah, we know. Look at them being a little bit dismissive or a little bit racist, but then there's always someone there to call them out. And like, look at all of these Black captains and lieutenants and how they are not upholding the system. That is false. First off, The vast majority of Law and Order ends with them solving the crime. That is fantasy. That does not happen. And then in the order part, after the law and then the order part starts, the DA cares. Sometimes they do what they need to get the conviction, but when they do that, most of the time the person is guilty and not just black, sometimes both. And you just have to it's soothing. It hits these beats, you know what I mean? Every episode is the same but different. And Dick Wolf is in his bag, okay? Like now I'm watching Chicago Med and like medical racism doesn't exist. Okay. But like I am only able to turn my critical brain off because I recognize that this is like unrealistic. It kind of goes back to like what we were saying earlier. If Dick Wolf was my only interaction with law enforcement and the medical community, I would think, why are y'all complaining? Okay? Why are we protesting out in the streets? Because Briscoe and Green have never done wrong. They solve all of the crimes and they do it with some quippy witticisms. So what's not to love, right? But like, you have to know that this is fake. Star Trek is the same thing. They've gotten rid of race or racism. They've gotten rid of all of the isms, but somehow have still maintained colonialism. Okay. There's no need for resource hoarding. Capitalism is stupid. We don't do things for money. How gross. And then yet the Ferengi are like a very gross allegory to like Judaism, like anti-Semitism, let's say. I'm not gonna say Judaism, but anti-Semitism. And yet they still fight wars. And they have prisons. But you know, okay. You have to know what you're turning your brain off from for it to actually work. If you don't know that, then it's not actually not practicing critical fandom. It's actually just like blindly consuming propaganda. I know that it's propaganda and I've rejected the propaganda, but I've enjoyed the content, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So, those are my two.
I have a lot in a smaller scale, but because everybody knows that Fast and Furious also takes place in an alternate universe where race is merely a concept. Because several people are related who are not the same ethnicity. And as far as we know, they were all born from the same family. Who can say? The Torettos, they got that magical, you can be whatever you want to be. And you know what? I love that. But I do know going into it, right? Like, it was a minute. It was like a movie or two where you're like, okay, realism. Not really. They were doing a lot of things that you cannot do in Los Angeles. Like,
didn't someone catch a car with their bare hands once? That's
like,
when I was like, oh, physics don't
if
work.
You jump ahead, like, it gets more egregious. Human bodies become more capable of more things as the movies go on, like holding helicopters. These are not supposed to be superheroes, like superpowered people. But they are like, got this helicopter, he ain't going nowhere because I got him. Holding it. Like, yeah, that helicopter is stuck now, boy, because, you know, a man is holding it.
Plant your feet.
Right, like, yeah, fine. So that's one of those ones where it's like, it gets more, it's just whatever. We're in a fantasy world because they be driving fast in LA. Where you do that at? You can't drive fast in LA. You can't do. That's why they had to leave LA. That's why they're like, we got to go to London or somewhere else. Somewhere we can drive more than 30 miles per hour and not get stuck. So that's one of them. And here's the answer is the actually opposite. One where I think people often project like it's just, I mean, since the MCU is the answer, but people are often say like, oh, it's comic book. It's just this. It's just that. And that's one of the ones I can't turn my brain off for because comic books, most of them, what we talked about earlier about fantasy and allegory, a lot of those were created by people who were speaking specifically to our cultural landscape. So it's like racism, anti-Semitism. All these things are built into those characters why they were created. Captain America is punching Hitler. This is not subtle. So when you say, oh, it's just a comic book movie, I'm like, but you are pretending that these were not created with a certain ideology that was baked into it. Like these heroes have histories that are tied to real world history and to real world context. And so like there are times, especially when magic, because I'm like, magic, you're not gonna make up magic. You can make up magic, but that magic still exists in that same world where like Captain America was punching a Nazi. You see what I'm saying? So you still have to, it still has to make sense. So I think I carry both of those things with me at all times. And so I got the smoke at all times. I'm ready for it. But then there is like, everyone is like a little, talk that shit, let it rock. It's fine. Whatever. Like, you know, it's a meter, right? And so every one of those is like, you go into it. You know what I mean? You like, if they stay right here, we good. I don't have to say nothing. And sometimes they go a little too far. You like, I gotta talk that shit because they would not do this. Black people wouldn't do this or this, all right? Or you like, you know what? This is actually fine. Like Supernatural is another one where I'm like, I'm not about to be chasing no ghosts. I'm not about to be driving around middle America. Period. Because I'm black, right? I'm not. That the premise is already shot because I'm not in Kansas. I'm not doing that. Driving around. Hey, you ain't getting a whole episode out of me because I'm getting pulled over every 20 minutes if I ain't getting worse, right? So I don't need black people in Supernatural because black people ain't doing supernatural things, right? That's one of the ones I can cut it off. Oh, but you know, it's sexist. Women, even white women, are not driving in the middle of nowhere alone to fight ghosts. I don't think that's that realistic. So I'm again not that pressed. It's not that many women. This seems like something only a specific type, a very specific type. Not even all white men. A lot of them like to be in their offices. They like air conditioning. They not out here and drive around middle America in an old car that they're gonna have to maintain, mind you. Okay. Hunting ghosts. They not doing that. That's such a specific niche type of person. So no, you don't have to show black people. I ain't gotta see an Asian person. I ain't gotta see a Latino. I ain't gotta see none of that. Cause we ain't about to be over there doing that. I'm not about to be over there. I asked most people, are you gonna be doing that? You see a ghost, you gonna go toward that ghost? No, you leaving, right? I'm not about to play with you. We don't play with the devil. Most people of color have we got lines, okay? We don't cross them. I don't expect that. So yeah, Supernatural's one where I was just like, now criticism about like how they treat gay characters, or they love them a little bit of a what's it called when you
queer baiting?
Like, there you go. They love some queer baiting. They love some queer baiting. Now that we can talk about. The gay people everywhere and they all types, right? Let's talk about that. But other than that, everything else, people like, oh, brain off. They driving in the middle of America, in our America, right? Like present day America, racist as hell. I don't want to see a black person on the show. I want them to be safe. So that means they would not be on this show, right? Like, so brain off. It's shut down. But there are times when like you can't remove that context, like with comic books, and that's all of them, Marvel, the DC ones. You cannot remove the context of like most of these were created with the explicit point of telling a human story about a condition that's like happening. Racism is like how we treat people with, in the 80s, like how we treated people with HIV. Like these are characters that are born from these real life things. So yeah, you can't. Some of them you can't. And I won't let you have it. Most of the time I will let you have it. But some of them you just can't be like, oh, it's just a comic book. Like, no, this is not just a comic book. And also, again, media informs real life. And this looks like our real life. So how characters are treated or how they act influence how we feel about those things in real life. But it's also propaganda. So remember that. Try to keep that in your mind. They will really have you thinking like the military ain't that bad. Don't let them get you. Because you cannot catch a helicopter. I don't care what they do in the Fast Furious and Captain America, all them. You cannot catch a helicopter with your hands. If you grab on a helicopter and you have the upper body strength to hold on, you will probably stay on the helicopter, but you are not keeping that helicopter grounded, what you're not going to do. So, critical thinking, critical fandom.
Right. You can turn off critical fandom, but you cannot turn off critical thinking. I think
Critical
that's the
thinking.
thing.
Yeah.
There we go.
Yeah.
I think
There
for
we
me,
go.
which is kind of funny because like going off what you were just saying, Nick, about like, you know, Marvel is based off of like real world, you know, issues or whatever, or just like real world in general, right? For me, my brain goes off with reality TV, which
That's
is
Well, yeah.
obviously
true.
real life. But that's when I'm like, you know what? I mean, there will be moments, obviously, like, you know, Love Island is back. Love that for me. But there are, you know, the black, especially the black women who go on that show. I'm
That's
definitely
actually
like
true.
my gaze is not like I didn't turn it all the way off. I'm still peeping. I'm watching for them, right? Like I'm trying to, you know, nothing better happen.
That's the thing.
Her.
It's like that's more. I
But
think I consider
in
that
general,
self-preservation.
but in general, I'm watching that show completely brain off. Like it's all for like shoot the ultimatum. Watching it for mess.
Ooh.
I'm watching, you know what I mean? I'm watching Housewives for mess. Like, oh, it's not for
Yeah.
any other
I think-
thing. I don't need to go into it. I think there are people who do go into it like critically, which I think is dope. I'm just not the one who is about to do
Right,
that.
because no.
As you're saying it though, I think the thing is that like with comic books and stuff, it's reflecting real life. And with reality TV, it's manufacturing and manipulating real life. So it's obviously like, I mean, I love my brother. It's fine. He spent money. He spent actual US dollars to go watch someone from Vanderpump Rules talk, who was kicked off of Vanderpump Rules for racism. But he told me he got the tickets for like down there free for like on a Groupon or something. So it was okay. I don't know. But like the amount of times they make them walk into the restaurant, like it's not real life, like, you know, and they talked about speaking of Love Island, Kaz and Liberty, two of our faves from, was that the winter Love Island? They were doing a podcast or a IG live or whatever, and they talked about like the start of their friendship, and they were saying because they were the first two on the island, but they did their intro like 7 times, right? We only see the one time that they go in, but like that, and they make it seem like this is all spontaneous and whatever, but like producers are not stopping you and being like, can we retake that or can we, you know, whatever. And so when you are manipulating real life, it does lend you to turn off your brain a little bit, as opposed to like with comic books and stuff, they're like taking things from real life and translating them into a fantastical medium. Reality TV is literally the opposite. I didn't think about that until you start talking, but I was like, yeah, it makes sense that you, because there's no, I had the flu and there was a Vanderpump Rules marathon on, and I watched about a day of that because I couldn't get off the couch, and it was there, and the remote was over there, so it was fine. This is what we're doing. At a certain point, I'm like, you guys are, it's a restaurant. You're in your 30s, 40s, or whatever. Like, this is your job. What are we talking about here? Why is there so much drama? Go work at Chipotle if you don't want to work with your ex-boyfriend. But you can't because you're on reality TV, and that's the actual job, right? So, yeah. I think it's totally valid to turn your brain off for reality TV. Yeah. And I think we should call it something else. It shouldn't be called reality TV, but
it shouldn't be. But yeah, I think as Black
non-scripted
people,
television, I think is the actual proper
I think
term.
that's what it is.
Yeah.
But I think as Black people too, we also kind of like just as unfortunately like have to know how to do that, like turn our brains off, because there was a long time when like you literally had nothing to watch if you were just I just had to choose to not be offended, right? Like you just had to do that because there were no options. And that's not even just white media. That was also like Black media too. Like when I look back at certain things that I loved when I was a kid, I can't watch Martin in the present day. I just can't. It's a lot of like fat jokes and making fun of dark skinned women and things that are like did not register to me as a kid, but also are things that I just didn't have. That was like, what else I'm gonna watch? Like I'm watching it because it's what I'm watching. And now we also have options, so like we don't have to watch those things. But I think we are more attuned to being able to be like, you know what, I'm just gonna turn that down because I just want to go and watch this, right? Like I started watching Dragon Ball, and I'm like, this is an anime from the 80s. So let me jump already before I
That was
press
gonna
play.
be one of mine. Yeah.
Right. Before I press
That
play,
was rough.
I already know because this is a anime. Like they still have not quite figured out Black people over there in Japan when it comes to this animation. They still doing things that I find questionable, but I again go into it knowing that. So if you already expecting the Black people to be on some bullshit, you like, oh, they actually made him not horrible or whatever the situation. The design is actually cool. This character is not talking like, hey, yo, I'm gonna come to your
Like
house.
Mr. Popo.
Right, but like again, the point is, I Dragon Ball from the 80s, I said this is gonna be that bull mentally. And I turned that off. So as soon as I was confronted with it, after there it is, and I just kept watching. I didn't have to sit with it, I didn't have to think about it because I've been doing that my whole life. Like I just been, this is like I used to love Annie, like little, Little Orphan Annie. And that was so, it was actually fairly recent. I was like, oh my God, Punjab is the most racist character in the world. Why would this character be this way? But it just did not occur to me when I was younger, or I was like, it's not important for this movie for me to engage with this critically. So it's just things that like we learned how to turn off for self-preservation and be able to like just engage in the media, both in entertainment media and literally in just rhetoric and like the news, right? Like you just had to be like, you know what, this ain't about me. That's fine. Whatever they're talking about ain't got nothing to do with me. So we have that self-preservation turning off of the brain too. Like sometimes like I just choose to not care about this because I can't do it right now. This is not the place for it. There are places where it's important for me to care about it because this is media for me or for kids or something. You like, they have to get this right. But some of it is like, it's fine. They don't have to get this right. It just got to be funny. And it's funny. I'm ignoring everything about it that does not work for me because I just want to laugh. So I think that's a big part of it too. Like we just have that, again, like with that Doctor Who moment. We already have this gauge of like, how much can I deal with? Because we knew it, like, again, first about 10 minutes, I'm like, oh, Lord, here it is. It's coming. The fact that we already have that instinct of like, do I want to deal with, like, do I have the capacity to deal with this today? Is like, we've been doing it instinctively for so long that now I think, you go into certain things, you like, I have enough of this in me. I can do this. This is something I can deal with today. Boop, press play. And there's some things you're like, oh, I don't. No, too many. I don't have this in me today, and like that's just how it is too. So I think that it also relates. Just taking care of your mental health and being like, I choose not to see because seeing is, I don't want to feel the hurt. I don't want to have to think about all the people who let this movie or this thing or whatever happen. I'm just gonna watch it and just let it happen. So, yeah, I think all that is a part of the experience of like watching things and like engaging with them critically or choosing not to. A lot of it is just not wanting to hurt yourself and put yourself in a position that you now have to like, especially with things you love when you were younger. Some of it, like don't watch Pocahontas. If you've not watched Pocahontas as an adult, don't do it. Keep it in nostalgia. That is a recommendation because it does not hit the same when you were grown. You're like, oh, hate it. You gotta listen to the soundtrack. That's it. Keep it in your heart.
It does though still have the line, "These white men are dangerous." So,
but if that's where
they
have
the gift. They have the gift.
I was gonna say they have that.
It was a Pocahontas kid, so I know.
No,
it does not. I rewatched it.
It has a line, and then it has an entire song.
Yeah.
No, it's literally like as a kid, I was like, okay, like I loved it so much, and I got a whole different thing out of it than I did as an adult, and that's why I wish I had known better to tell myself, don't do this. Keep that nostalgia, baby. I don't have that.
Yeah,
nostalgia.
I rewatched it recently because I wanted to show Aminata, and I was like, because I know it's problematic, but let me see if it's problematic in a way that we can like have the conversation. And I was like, you just
no. And they have like the straight to like video like sequel, which of course at the point where I had already hurt myself, I thought I might as well. So I won. And it definitely ain't better. I was like, and this is why you gotta want better for yourself. And I didn't in that moment because I was already so mad. I was like, well, I might as well. And I should have never did it. So some things, don't let nostalgia stay in the nostalgia, right? Don't try to see if it still holds up because it won't. It definitely won't. Especially if it's like Disney, because Disney really did not care about y'all. But we was like, we was kids. They didn't care about social issues. They were just like pretty things, merchandise. I mean, it's still kind of thing, but they tried. Bless their hearts. Don't do it. Just don't do it.
My two were like the problematic anime, especially some of the older anime. A lot of it I am watching like now for the first time, so I also have to kind of like I have to very much ground myself
Right,
in
you have to be like
when it was released, and then also like the nostalgia that other people have. Like I remember watching Sailor Moon, and I did end up loving it in the end, and so many people love it, but like there are so many moments where I was like, what is this?
It's still like
what is happening?
Like I sincerely, it's because I love meth. The thing about it is, it's the thing where like this is all bad, but because I like enjoy this particular meth, it works. But yeah, it's like ooh,
it was a lot.
Tricky.
It was a lot.
It is tricky.
We got there in the end, but I eventually was able to like let the certain things go. That was fine. And then also I like love sitcom as a TV genre, which it's like a lot of people find funny, but it's fine. It's my favorite. And a lot of sitcoms are objectively bad.
I mean this sincerely. Do not revisit something that you have a positive. Like it really is like hard. It's hard. Like Carl Winslow. Like as a kid, I like Carl Winslow. As an adult, man, he a cop. Right? Like your mind is just it changes everything about how you engage with it when you have different content. Like some of it can rise above that, but also like.
But I am able to like
story behavior. Like you would call the police on him in real life, right? Like in certain characters, it's like so. Yeah, sitcoms are very hard.
Especially like they're so. It's especially funny to me as like a queer person because they're so heteronormative. Like it's starting to switch, right? We're starting to get more like diversity in characters, more queer characters, like more fun sitcom storylines, but like one of the sitcoms I like, and I do go back to, even though there are parts of it that doesn't hold up. I think it holds up better than some others of the time. Everybody Loves Raymond, and yeah, like it's just, but the whole thing is this like is the dynamic of like the like doofus husband, right, and like the like annoyed, right, and I'm like I know that. And I know that I hate that in real life. And I know that I couldn't be like necessarily friends with those people. And I hate folks projecting that onto me. And yet, and still, I am showing up for it. And
I think that's
finding like the humor in. What?
I feel like that's because it's something you're detached from. Because now when I think about it, all those sitcoms that don't hold up or that do hold up are the ones that have no, like, I just don't like. I don't like Friends. I don't like Friends. But I can watch Friends, and it does not bother me. My experience isn't different now because it was always Friends. Like Seinfeld was always Seinfeld. So those things are easy
about Frasier
to pop up. Yeah, but say most of those are actually easy to watch. It's mainly when it's now I'm thinking about it. Like, it is definitely like because now we have our own relationship with certain archetypes or certain people. Yeah, because white people, I'm like, they just over there, white people, and they doing white people things. And I think that's how it holds up because y'all always.
Well, I will say that we watched the Cosby Show with Aminata not too long ago, and we all decided in the house, Banno knows, we were like, we're just not gonna we're not gonna get into it. We'll get into it when she's older, but like none of that shows up in the Cosby Show, and it holds up. Like, and there are lots of like moments in which I'm like, this was a really great show. And like, I really hate the like gross feeling now, knowing what we know now. But like, if you're binging it and stuff, you can't hold that heaviness in your head while like Rudy's being Rudy or like, Denise is making the Gord Guttrell shirt. That's just a great piece of television. So like, yeah, I did not get Perry Mason canceled, but like I'm glad I didn't even know it got canceled, but I'm glad it did because that was rude. that
Yeah.
Perry Mason remake, and they were trying to make it all gritty, and I saw a penis in the first 5 seconds of what is this? So,
Well, on that note,
She took it back to her roots. What the penis?
I was like, we got Robin to say penis on the screen. So I guess now is the time for
that Perry Mason remake was a mess. I'm
Oh
sorry.
my gosh. Thank y'all for joining us and for rocking with us as we move platforms. As a reminder, BNC creates content through the lens of critical and creative fandom. You can check out our stuff at blacknerdscreate.com. And then we're also on our baddie road trip. So we're on a campaign to get to $1,000 a month on Patreon. So if you go to patreon.com/blacknerdscreate, you can support us, join our campaign where as we like reach milestones, we'll be unlocking fun content and both publicly and on Patreon. So yeah. And then if you're unable to make a monthly commitment but still want to support us, you can go to blacknerdscreate.com/support. We're on Twitter at BLKNerdsCreate, Instagram and Tumblr at BlackNerdsCreate. So we'll see you all there. Bye, y'all.
Bye.